Who scored for Philly?
Westbrook.
Nice. I've got him in my office fantasy league.
Yo, you guys starving?
I want like chili cheese fries with jalapeno peppers.
Like 500 tacos. 4 dozen pepperoni donuts.
Hold on a sec.
Sup? Just chilling at Katie's. Katie, Jen, Sarah, Farron. Yep. 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 Love you too. Bye.
Oh,
I love you too. I love you so much.
Yo, hey, Rebecca, who am I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, love you too. I love you too. Who am I? Who was I right then?
I don't know. Who are you?
I was you!
Sick. Whatever.
That was my impression of you.
It's just so annoying. It's just like, what are you doing? I'm just like, I don't know, what was I doing when you called me like 5 minutes ago? I'm watching football.
I know, it's like Kevin will call me when he gets off the subway and he's walking to the apartment. I'm like, what are we going to talk about when you get here?
It's like a continuous stream of talking.
I hate talking. No way.
Yo, what's up with the Knicks?
Sucks.
Make room for LeBron.
It sucks when your team sucks.
Yeah, because when your team sucks, you suck. Yo, would you guys rather suck and be on an awesome team or be awesome on a suck team?
Yo, I'd rather suck and win like 1,000,000 championships. It's like a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, you already suck, so you're halfway there.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Get out of my house.
Whatever, make me.
Great, I'll pick you up. I'll throw you out the window.
Yeah, throw me out the window. What you gonna do about it, huh? What you gonna do? Whoa!
Yo, check it. They're gonna do an instant replay.
Oh, helmet to the ribs.
Yo, you know what kills me? It's like, Dave will only clean if we're gonna do it together. So first of all, I'm like, I don't see anything that's that dirty.
I never clean. No way.
He wants it to be like your lovey bonding time.
Yo, that's ridiculous.
Matt is totally crazy about that kind of stuff. He got home last night and he goes, Katie, we need to talk. And then he goes on for like half an hour about how he knows that I don't want to take him out on dates anymore. We just went to the movies like last month.
What'd you see?
G.I. Joe.
Such good violence.
I liked it. Then he goes, you don't understand me.
Oh my god.
What does that mean? I don't even know what that means. What does that even mean? It doesn't even mean anything.
Like, Matt is crazy and I don't know what to do.
All guys are crazy.
Kevin's not crazy. You're right.
Hey man, it's that Bud Light commercial. Oh, I love this commercial.
My name is Julie Metzger.
And I'm a nurse. I talk about sex every day to preteens and teens, and I work with high school kids sometimes, and I'm here to talk about relationships. And I'd love to know what you guys would define as a stereotype. How would you define stereotype? Yeah.
Judging people on what they look like or before you know them.
Okay, judging. Okay. What else? What's a stereotype? Yeah.
Like a generalization.
Generalization. Who saw the movie before? Would you call that a stereotype of what guys are? Yeah. Did that live true for you? Sort of. Did the guys think that that was true? Is a stereotype true?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. All right. Well, let's see what you think about the differences between guys and girls and stereotypes. And I was thinking if you were an alien or if we were all aliens and we only had information about American teenagers from 2 episodes of Glee. So we're up on our spaceship and all we have in our research is 2 episodes of Glee. There are some stereotypes that you could make from watching those two episodes. And I'm going to throw out one of those. And you tell me, on a scale from 1 to 10, how true that stereotype is. Would you agree with me? It's a stereotype from watching Glee. Got it? Not is it true in real life, but more is it true from watching Glee. All right? The very first stereotype that I notice as an alien watching 2 episodes of Glee is that popular guys are good at sports. True. All right? Just a sec. So if this is 1, that absolutely, I can't see that whatsoever from watching 2 episodes of Glee, to 10, so true. I'll walk here and you raise your hand when you think You agree with me as an alien. Got it? So, I'm saying popular guys are good at sports. If I watch 2 episodes of Glee, true for all American teens, I'm going to start at 1. You absolutely don't agree with that stereotype from Glee. And 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, and 9, and 10. You all agree? All right. Now think through about that stereotype, and then think through what's true at your school. What's true at your school? Popular guys are good at sports. And now I'm going to walk across here and raise your hand when it's true at your school. 1 is it's never true. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So is a stereotype true? Because to me, it was mostly true. Let's try another one. If I watch 2 episodes of Glee, a stereotype about American teenagers is popular girls are pretty. Would you agree with me from watching 2 episodes of Glee? 1, I don't agree at all. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now think about your high school. Think about where you are. Popular girls are pretty. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So what do you think of that? Is a stereotype true? Does that bug you? You just affirmed Glee. That's true. What do you girls think? Annoying. What else? Sad.
They're ugly on the inside.
Guys, what do you think?
What's pretty? Like you say, like popular girls are pretty. So I'm pretty in this scenario.
I think you just did. Whatever that means for you, it's true. I mean, right? It's interesting, isn't it? I think sometimes, don't you think a little bit more of your high school or yourself even? It's kind of interesting. Seems like when I watch Glee sometimes that I find it trivializes kids. Or trivializes or kind of makes fun of stereotype. But if the stereotype is also true, what does that say? It's kind of interesting. What?
Oh, I said that it's not a stereotype.
And it's not a stereotype. It's interesting. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about this idea of male and female. I'd like to talk a little bit about what we know about male and female that is same and different. And one of the things that's interesting is that when we talk, I'm going to throw out a bunch of research studies that I know about that talks about male and female brains, and I'm going to throw it out to you not to make any sort of statements, but just to allow you to be stimulated by some of the ideas and to offer back up to your small groups an opportunity to go, wow, that was interesting, or this really bugged me, or that was challenging, or whatever. Because one of the things about research is there's lots of things that point towards truth, and yet, just like a stereotype, it isn't 100% truth. There are lots of studies that are giving us an idea of the difference between a male brain and a female brain, and yet none of it is totally true. There is no 100% male brain and no 100% female brain. So I'm just going to throw out some ideas towards you, but I thought we'd start just with a very, very basic idea from Genesis 1 about what God said about male and female. See, as you know from the story, from the poem in Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and God saw the light, and the light was good. And he called the light day and the darkness night, and he created space between the waters, and he called the space sky, and the ground, and the land, and the waters, and the sea, and the seed-bearing plants, and the trees, and God saw that it was good. And then he created seasons, and sun, and stars, and saw that it was good. And fish, and birds, and animals, and saw that it was good. And he created humans, and saw that it was good. And then in chapter 2, is the very first thing that's not good. See, the Lord God said, "It is not good for man to be alone, and so I will make him a partner." So right away, the only thing so far in all of creation that is not good, according to this poem, is the idea that man would be alone. And so there is a difference in male and female, because I certainly can figure out that this amazing creator could have figured out a way to make us man-woman, right? But he didn't. He created man and woman. And so I'm intrigued by that. And I think, so what is the difference? So let's just talk through what we know and what we don't know that is different between male and female brains. First of all, believe it or not, you actually all have a brain. This is what it looks like, a little bit like a kidney bean. Here's your face, okay? And here's your brain. Now, there's some things that you share entirely the same. This part is the thinking part of your brain. That's same, male and female. This part right back here is coordination, male and female. This part is emotions, male and female. And right next to emotions is memory, both male and female. And this whole part is where both male and female start doing all their thinking. It's all the cognitive part of your brain. Okay, all the things you've learned, how to tie your shoe and tell a secret and do calculus, is all up here. That is both same male and female. The way your brain works is that it connects one dendrite or nerve cell to another dendrite or nerve cell. And there are these crazy looking cells that communicate to each other not by touching, but actually by chemicals. And where male and female sometimes differ is in the kind of chemical connection between those two nerve cells. Now, what can look different is kind of intriguing. First of all, when we put boy babies and girl babies in a crib, girl babies pay more attention to a face than boy babies, and boy babies pay more attention to a mobile than a face. Interesting. Challenging. Is that a stereotype? Did they learn that? When we put boy chimp babies and girl chimp babies with a bunch of toys, girl chimp babies choose dolls and boy chimp babies choose trucks. It's kind of interesting because I thought perhaps that this idea of male-female was kind of taught to us, right? Like if we would introduce babies to boys, then they would hold babies instead of trucks. But in fact, when we hand them to chimpanzees, it's not true. We know this, that by the age of 20 months, girls have twice the vocabulary as boys at 20 months. And we also know that at 20 months, boys are able to build a much cooler block palace than a girl. Now that's crazy. Is that because we handed boys more blocks? Is that because we talked to more girls? Is that a stereotype? Or does it point towards truth? Here's what we know about a brain. A brain loves to be handed information. And in fact, it will grow and be challenged and flourish, especially when it's already good at something. So one of the intriguing things is girls, what was the stereotype about girls here and talking in that movie? Do girls talk a little or a lot? A lot. Is that true or stereotype? Kind of intriguing. And how does that work then when at 20 months girls have twice the vocabulary of boys? Do you find that surprising or not? Here's the craziest thing. By 3 years old, boys and girls have equal vocabulary. So by 3 years old, both boys and girls are now equal in talking. But if they're equal in talking at 3, why is it so different when you're in high school and girls are still talking? And when you think about social lives of girls and guys, and you think about where social stress lies, what big weapon does a girl have in her arsenal but words? Right? So intriguing. Let's take another study. They took at the University of London a bunch of girls, they're your age, and they put them through an MRI. Do you guys know what an MRI is? They scanned girls' brains, and then they said things to them in the MRI. And the things they said were this, so in a microphone in their ears. Your friends have just seen you picking your nose. And all of a sudden on that MRI, those girls' brains lit up like fireworks. Then they took people that looked like me and the other women in this room that are over the age of 25. And they put us through the MRI, and they said, your friends had just seen you picking your nose, and there wasn't even a dull light bulb that went off for those older women. Girls who are in junior high and high school, brains light up when they feel self-conscious. The only other girls that they got whose brain to light up was a brand new mom. Girls' brains light up when they feel like somebody has shone a spotlight on them. Let me tell you about a boys' test. They took a bunch of boys the age of all of you, and they put them in a test in a room with a video driving game. They put the boys all by themselves, and they were challenged this. I want you to drive this car as fast as you can. I want you to win the race. You're only being timed against yourself. Obey the rules and see what happens. Those boys drove as fast as they could and obeyed every stoplight, made every turn, and completed the game. Then they took those same boys and they put them in an auditorium with the other boys and individually put each boy down so that everybody could see his game. And they said, drive this car as fast as you can and see how fast you can do it. And every single boy drove way faster, broke through every stop sign, disobeyed every law known to man on a driving thing to win the race because it was being shown in front of everybody. Does that sound familiar or a stereotype? Here's what we know about girls' brains and boys' brains. Girls' brains have chemicals that communicate between their brain cells called oxytocin. Oxytocin floods a girl's brain every time she's in a group. And what happens is when you get pulled away from the group, you don't have the same oxytocin. But when you say, hey, let's join in together, your brain gets flooded with this idea of oxytocin, helps those brain cells communicate and makes your brain feel great. That is why girls tend to do things in groups. Like at a dance, how many girls does it take to go to the bathroom? Is that a stereotype or is it the truth? It's actually statistically true. Does that mean a girl can't go to the bathroom by herself? Of course not. But it means that girls tend to do what is called in brain research, tend and befriend. Meaning that if they can join in, it creates a better feeling in their brain. Intriguingly enough, when you think about that idea of being in that MRI, girls' brains light up if they feel separate from the group. They feel rewarded when they create group. Under stress, girls tend to join forces and find allies. That is their way of dealing with stress. Do you call a friend? Do you talk to your mom? Do you call your aunt? Do you have a journal? You connect to something. Do you come here? Do you talk to Aaron? Do you find your sponsor? You tend to connect. Girls are relationship-centric, and their brains reward them for that. Boys' brains, and again, there's no 100% boy brain. There may be a girl here that goes, you know what? I can really more identify with the boy brain. So it's not just who you are as boy or girl, but the kind of brain and the way it's rewarded. Boys' brains work like this. There's a really strong communicating chemical here called dopamine. Dopamine excites all the brains in this room, but it's especially powerful when you add testosterone to it. And testosterone is a capital T hormone for all boys. Boys, from the beginning of the time that they're in about 6th grade to the time that they're in their early 20s, start to have 1,000 times more testosterone between 6th grade and when they're in college. Testosterone loves to create the feeling of fight or flight under stress. That means that boys, instead of creating allies, their natural tendency of their brain is to actually stake a claim and to stand out alone. In other words, drive the car as fast as you can, no matter what it takes. Fight or flight. Is that stereotype or is it true? I have a friend, John Medina, and this is the way he describes all of that idea. He says, take 2 boys and a rock. The first boy says, I could throw a rock and hit those girls on the couch. And the second guy says, well, I could throw a rock and hit the back of the room. And the first boy says, I could really throw a rock and hit the moon. That is fight or flight. Be on top. Never be on the bottom, right? A boy's brain rewarded by being on top. Here's 2 girls and a rock. Well, I could throw a rock and hit those girls on the couch. And the second girl says, me too. Now, what do you think of that? Does that seem familiar? A stereotype? Truth? What do you guys think? How does it show up in your life? Does it show up in sports? Does it show up in dating life? Boyfriend-girlfriend life? What do you think? No one? All right, yes.
Just raise our hand.
No, do whatever you want. Call out.
Well, I think that's true when it comes to like guys and girls about like being competitive and stuff, but girls are really competitive about like friends and like relationships and stuff.
Absolutely. But isn't that about the group? So it's still relationship centric, right? It's not about the achievement, it's about the relationship group. But good point. Yeah.
I think it's true for girls because every girl kind of wants to be the same, so they can fit in.
It's about being the same to fit in, and the guy messaging, whether it's we've been taught or whether it's true, and perhaps both, right, is to be stand out and to be the best. And it's different. What else? Go ahead.
I don't think that's always true.
Of course, not always true.
It's like there's some girls who are like really competitive, like with like sports and stuff. Like it's hard to be like to play like sports and not be competitive.
Right. Do you think being joining also means not being competitive? Do you think those are 2 separate ideas?
I think they're just different ideas.
I would say girls can be competitive, but it's more in relationship to others in a different way. I don't know. It's intriguing. Go ahead. What else? Yeah.
I think girls are more competitive when there's boys involved.
Ah, intriguing idea. Intriguing idea. There's a woman named Deborah Tannen who's kind of a hero of mine. She's a linguist at Georgetown University. And she asked the question, is there a difference between boys and girls and how they socialize? So she started with a group of 2nd graders. And she put the girls in one room, and she put the boys in another room, and she said to the 2nd graders, talk about something important. And then she left them there for 30 minutes. And she had a little research team with mirrors and double-sided windows, and they had video cameras set up, and they had recording devices going in there. So the kids felt entirely separate. And here's what they found. The research team went down and checked in on the girls. And the girls, the second grade girls, had made a circle. And they talked 100% of the time about people. What they found important was people. And they took the assignment seriously. They took turns. They went around the circle. And when they spoke, they looked each other in the eye and they nodded. All right? So the research team said, that was crazy. We didn't really expect that so much. Let's go down and check in on the second grade boys. So they walked down the hall and they looked in through the mirrors. And here was the second grade boys. Nobody was sitting down. Everybody was walking around. Lots of people were performing for the video camera. And 100% of the conversation was about doing. What they wish they could be doing if they weren't stuck in this room for 30 minutes. What they'd like to be doing with the stuff that was in the room that they were told not to do anything with. And what they were going to do after this time when they're supposed to be talking about something important. They had a fabulous time. They got along. They totally connected with each other. But it was an entirely different experience. So Deborah Tannen and her research team said that was so unique. Did people learn that? Was that who they were? Why was that so different? So let's check out to see about older kids. So they took a group of 6th graders. They put them in 2 separate rooms. They left them there for 30 minutes. They said, please talk about something important. So they went in and checked on the 6th grade girls. And the 6th grade girls had made a circle. They talked 100% of the time about a girl that couldn't be there. All 100% of the time about relationships with that girl. They took turns, they looked each other in the eye, and they nodded. They spent 100% of the time in the circle talking to each other about relationships. So the team said, interesting. They went down, checked on the 6th grade boys. Lots of people were sitting. Some were walking around. Most people, though, nobody was sitting in a circle, and most of the people who were sitting at a slant like this. They talked 100% of the time about doing. In that 30 minutes, they covered 55 different topics. Nobody looked each other in the eye, but everybody looked out of the corner of their eye. They had a fabulous time. They joked. They yucked it up. They totally engaged with each other, and it was looked entirely different. So then the research team said, okay, interesting. Let's pick some 10th graders. And they asked them to do the same thing. And the 10th grade girls made a circle. They talked 100% about people. They checked in on the 10th grade boys. The 10th grade boys sat perpendicular from each other, but in all the conversations had the most heartfelt conversation of significance of any of the conversations so far. Yet nobody looked each other in the eye. Nobody nodded their head. Nobody engaged or cast out in the same way as the girls did and the boys. This looked entirely different, yet the significance of the conversation in terms of relevance, in terms of heartfelt sharing, was actually most significant in the 10th grade boys. So then they turned around and asked dating couples in college, tell me about your relationships and differences between male and female. And the girls said, see, what I want to do at the end of the day is I want to get together, I want to look each other in the eye, and I want to talk about my day and the people in my day. But he doesn't seem to be able to hear me because he lays on the ground and covers his eyes with his arm, and he can't even hear me. And the boy said, that is the way that I listen. Because if I sat up and looked around, all I'd be able to think about was the doing. This is the way I can focus on you. Now, what do you think of all that? Deborah Tannen walked away saying, boys' and girls' brains and what they're listening for and communicating looks different. What do you think? True? Stereotype? Ideas? Yeah.
Say the whole thing about the guys like in their back and like covering their faces is kind of true. Because I know if I'm ever in a room like talking to someone, if I do something to shim like around the room, I'm more than likely focus on everything around that unless I'm like I get that when they're talking about me. Sometimes if I see something, I'll get distracted by that versus the person that I'm talking to.
And so if that was with a girlfriend perhaps, and she's expecting you to look her in the eye and nod and make a circle, kind of a disconnect, don't you think?
Yeah, feel too set up, I guess.
Yeah, and it feels awkward for you because you're used to being perpendicular perhaps and just looking out of the corner of your eye and maybe touching base on that difficult thing but just coming and going out of it. Does that ring true for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who else can add? Anybody? True, not true? Yeah.
For me, like, whenever I have, like, my deepest conversations, it's usually, like, in the car, so I'm obviously not, like, eye to eye, because I'll crash, but...
Yeah. Right. Because it's not like this. It allows a certain freedom, and you're doing. Love it. Yes. Totally get that. Yes.
Something to add to that is whenever I'm having like an important conversation with a boy, I notice that we'll either be like in the car or I will never look them in the face. I'll like look past them and it'll go way better. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find that the thing about getting distracted, I get distracted a lot too, but I don't think that's just a guy thing.
No, you're right. It's never, not 100% of anybody, right?
If I'm talking to someone and I have to point out that I forgot to listen sometimes, so I get distracted.
What do you think a Bible study looks like when there's both male and female and you think about what people are expecting to be heard? It's intriguing, isn't it? You were going to say something.
Oh, I find that eye contact really tricky me because I like eye contact and it doesn't bother me.
I'm looking right at you and nodding because I agree completely. Yeah.
I'd say the minimal eye contact is true when I'm with other guys, like sort of with just was like driving and stuff, really deep conversations. But I feel like you can almost connect better, especially if you're talking to a girl and you're looking in their face. I don't think it's not.
But I think one of the things here is the idea that everybody wants to be heard, right? So how we feel heard might look different. Yes?
I find that I don't make eye contact with people because, for like, reasons that seem to be said. I make eye contact with people because, like, when I was little, my parents told me that making eye contact with someone when they talked, it was, like, out of respect, showing that you were listening. And like my dad
You learned that skill.
Yeah, so it wasn't like something I decided to do. It was because my mom and dad always made sure that I did that. So.
Well, there's always a mix here, right? Because some of that you may have been drawn to and it got reinforced by your parents. So, right? It gets underlined. Oh, yeah.
Our small group always sits in a circle.
Is it girls?
Yeah. And it just... it never occurred to me that you wouldn't sit in a circle.
You know, the video here was so great. Were those guys sitting in a circle?
No.
And did they look each other in the eye? No. It was sideways. It was that part, again, is that stereotype? Yes, and yet it points towards truth. Does that mean, though, that every guy doesn't give eye contact or that it's weird for guys to give eye contact? 0 on that. I think it's learning how people communicate, though, in places of comfort. I think it's interesting. Yeah.
I find eye contact awkward if you hold it for like more than 10 seconds.
Sure. I would say most people do. Yeah. Again, hold it all loosely, right? We're just talking about this idea. I'm going to just share one. Okay, I want to hear from these two people, and then I'm going to share a new idea. Yeah.
Okay, when you were talking about a circle versus like laying whatever, and it made me think of working in a group on a group project.
Yeah.
Because I was just doing this earlier today, and if you're working in a group that's like half guys, half girls, there's a couple guys and a couple girls. The girls will usually be like sitting and facing each other with like computers on their laps, talking, and then the guy is like just throwing something in the air while laying on the ground or staying.
He's doing
contributing, and you're like typing what he says, probably just as much as the girls
Yeah.
are, but he's laying on the ground.
And perhaps you can honor that, though. But maybe that's his way of being able to communicate better. You had another idea.
Well, yeah, for me, like, eye contact, I feel like distance. So, like, I feel like right here could be
It's easier for us to hold eye contact from here than if you were having this close. Yeah, that's true. Did you have one more thing? Yeah.
When I'm having like an intense grow sesh or whatever you call
Low sesh, like that.
really, really deep and not something you really talk about in front of girls as guys. I guess you'd be talking about something and like I'll look at the ground or that will be a thing like when sitting down and look at the ground and I'll be thinking about stuff. So if I look at them, something around them, I'll lose track. And I'll kind of like start focusing on that. So I guess the grounds it get away from that.
Grounds you in the bro sesh.
So you're looking
Sure. Sure. Yes.
Well, like at this senior high girls sleepover for this trip, we ended up sitting in a circle talking like 4 or 5 times and like taking turns saying different things by accident.
Yeah. Accident?
Well, we were like, let's all circle up and talk.
No, it's just part of how you've learned to communicate, or that you get rewarded by in your brain. Yes.
I think the circle thing is part of the group thing because in a circle nobody is on the outside.
Well, it goes. That's exactly part of that whole thing of tend and befriend. A circle takes care of that, doesn't it? Those are highlighting some of the differences, but I want to spend a minute talking about what is so the same. Because I actually think there's more the same than different. And the big overriding idea here is the idea of being heard. And I want you to leave tonight into your small groups with a skill of how to help people feel that they are heard. Because whether you're talking to in a bro sesh, two bros, or whether you're in a circle with a girl, or whether it's a guy and a girl, whether it's a parent or child, whether it's teacher and student, part of this idea of being heard is a very powerful thing that's shared across human beings. Some of the best research on this idea of being heard has come right here from the University of Washington, internationally renowned Dr. John Gottman. And Dr. John Gottman, maybe some of you have heard of him, he actually created a little love lab over on the University of Washington campus. It's an apartment. And he had married couples come into this apartment. He put video cameras all over except for in the bedroom and the bathroom, just so you don't have that visualized and scares you away and you can't think of anything else. But he watched and listened and made 25,000 gazillion hours of videotape of couples talking. And he asked the question, the simple question, for 20 years he asked the question, what makes a great marriage? And the answer was when each of the individual couples feels heard. Okay, hold that idea for a second, because then he and his wife turned around and asked the same question about kids. They said, what makes interesting, resilient, excellent problem-solving, dynamic, compassionate young people like yourselves? And so they studied for 20 years. Maybe some of you were even in that study. They followed families for 20 years. They took urine samples and heart rates. They videotaped them. They asked them questions. They studied them for 20 years. And guess what? The most interesting, resilient, compassionate people out there to change the world, those kids felt heard. You tell me what it means to feel heard. What is he saying there? If you're in a marriage and your marriage is going well, you feel heard. And when you're a person just like yourself and you want to go out and change the world and you feel dynamic and interesting and resilient and compassionate and you can take it on, you have felt heard. What does it mean?
Well, like, I think to me it's like that someone cares about like what you think and like honestly like, you know, doesn't just be like, oh, okay, you know.
They actually invest and care in what you're about. How would that look? What would that mean? Yeah.
That means listening is really important.
What kind of listening? Because I've already described here two kinds of listening. For some people, listening means this, boy or girl. And for some people, listening feels like this. For you and me, it's that. So what does being heard mean then? Because for you, in the bro sesh, it means looking at the ground. But for you to feel heard by him, it means this. What do you think?
I was gonna say, like, as a girl, if like I was having a good conversation with like one of my guy friends and they were like doing this, I would feel like, hello, like back over here, like one of those things. But like, they might actually be listening, but it doesn't look like it.
So you don't yet feel heard unless they're going like, you need to be her friend. See,
we are friends.
Okay, I like that. What do you think?
Well, it seems to me like I'm pretty used to both types of listening, but what makes me feel like I'm being heard is when people remember things that I've said on like a later day, not just like they can repeat it back to me. Because I know in a lot of things that we're taught in school, it's like you'll be taught active listening, you can repeat it back to them, but that's like what 30 seconds later, and like I mean like days or like weeks later, people will still remember something I told them, and that to me feels like they were really listening. So it doesn't. I feel like I don't really care what they're doing because I used to be like, you have to be looking at me and nodding, but now I'm so used to both, and I know that they work that I just feel like they need to be able to remember.
Okay. That's a lot of pressure to be your friend, I think. Okay, I'm going to tell you what Dr. John Gottman says being heard means. Dr. John Gottman says when we've looked at all these families and all these kids and all these marriages, more than anybody in the entire planet has ever done, being heard means having someone actually be able to be empathetic with your emotional space. So the way that would look is to say, you know, Aaron, that you seem troubled by that, or that seems important to you, or you seem sort of sad, or wow, that must be difficult, or you must see man, you're pissed about that. It's an acknowledgement of their emotional space. And I know that you know this is true, because do you feel heard by your parents when you walk in and you go, it's so unfair, and someone goes, I don't care about fair or unfair. Let me give you 6 ideas to change that. Do you feel heard? No. What about when someone says, I've just had the worst day in the history of the planet, and someone goes, I told you that was going to be that. You should have studied harder. Let me give you 6 ideas on how you could change that. Do you feel heard?
No.
What about this? You say, after the worst day in the history of the planet, and someone says, come on, put a happy face on. Your grandparents are coming over. Do you feel heard? No. So being both told what to do and how you feel, or being dismissed on how you feel is not being heard. Is that true?
Yeah.
So one of the key things I want you to practice in your small group is this idea of trying to first and foremost identify with the person's emotional space, whether you look them in the eyes or not, and then turn around without giving them advice or telling your own story. See if you can say something like, so hey, what do you think you're going to do about that? Do you hear the difference? If I turn around and give you advice, or if I tell my own story, do you feel heard? No. But if I turn around and say, gee, that must be tough, or that must be difficult, or you seem sad, or that would be hard, or whatever, and you identify with their emotional space, and then you ask them, so how do you think that's going to work, or what do you think you're going to do? You stay focused on that person. You've identified their emotional place, You ask them to respond, and then the final thing in the 3 parts is to say, how do you think that's going to work? Now, there doesn't have to be those exact words, but there's 3 parts to it. First is saying, identifying with their emotional space. The second is asking what they think they are going to do in some way. And 3 is to say, how do you think it's going to play out? And Dr. John Gottman says, people then feel heard. So when I'm going to send you to your small groups, I want to have 2 challenges. The first challenge is to think of some scenarios where your friend is struggling, true scenarios for you. And to practice maybe for the girls in a circle, for the guys more in a sesh. I want you to think through of this. How would you respond to a friend who's just revealed a challenge? Or maybe someone you want to confront with a challenge. They've been drinking, they're getting into the wrong scene, whatever you want to do, whatever is true for you. And see if you can practice those 3 ideas so that they feel heard. That's challenge number 1. Challenge number 2 is to come up with a list as a group. You don't have to do it in this order. You can do whatever order you want. The challenge in group 2 is to create a list, and you can do this individually or as a group, of all the things that you wish. So I want the girls to put together a list of all the things they wish high school guys understood about high school girls. And I want all the guys to put together a list of the things they wish that high school girls understood about high school guys. That's your assignment, those 2 ideas. Does everybody feel like they know what to do? Thumbs up. I'll be back next week. We're going to talk about decision making.